If you have a really strong inner critic, it can be really hard to get distance from that voice. It can be rabbiting on in your ear. And often, what's taught in the personal development industry is to use affirmations and positive self reinforcement. So you start to build up a positive narrative alongside this negative narrative in your system. And the hope is eventually the positive one becomes more strong and the negative one becomes weaker. Now, this does work, but it takes a long time. I think for me, this took something like between like 5 and 8 years when I did it for myself. And there's actually a faster way, a quicker way, like a shortcut, if you will, to getting distance from the negative voice and reducing the power that that voice has in your system. So that's what we're going to look at briefly in this video today. So I'm Natalie Ford. I love talking about our inner world. I love supporting my clients to get to know themselves better from the inside out so that they can change things that are not feeling good and supportive in their system and create happier, more fulfilling lives for themselves. And part of what I support my clients with is exactly this, like finding parts of us inside that have a strong critical narrative or a narrative, a story, a voice that is not supportive, not feeling loving, kind, gentle. It's not like the divine mother or the divine father energy. It's a more wounded voice within us, and changing that so that we can actually have a happier, more joyful experience. And I've literally just come off a client session. So I thought I'd share with you what we did in that client session, where I helped my client actually create space from her inner critic and have a different perspective so she can start to leapfrog, like take the shortcut to changing this inner narrative to be more positive. So I believe, and you've already noticed in the way that I speak, that we have many parts inside of us. We're not just one individual inside. And what I mean by that is you're going to have an inner critic part. You're going to have a part that thinks that you're amazing and awesome, and why doesn't everybody else see that? And you're going to have a part that is really focused on your career and really goal driven, and you're going to have a part that is maybe looking for a relationship or is really in love with a partner. And we have many parts. I believe we actually have hundreds, but we don't need to go into that today. And the first step of creating distance and befriending your inner critic is to recognize that your inner critic is not all of you, because you don't feel that way about yourself all of the time, right? You don't always feel shit about yourself. You don't always feel like, oh God, I'm not good enough, I should be doing differently. Sometimes you actually think, oh, I did really well there. Yay me. Like oh God, I did really well. And if the negative voice was you all of the time, then you wouldn't have those positive experiences. So it's good to just take a step back for a moment and say, oh, yeah, actually, I do have different voices. I do have a voice that supports me and champions me. And I do have a voice that is negative, and I do have these other voices. And to recognize, first of all, that these are all miniature parts of us inside. And it's not just one part, it's lots of many parts inside. So that is step number one, to get a little bit of distance to know, oh, actually me, the adult version. So for me, the adult Natalie, I'm not any one of those parts. Like, those parts can come forward. And I love the bus analogy. You've maybe heard like the analogy of like having all your inner children in the back and you're driving the bus, and just every now and then one of your inner children comes from the back of the bus and grabs the steering wheel and is like, I'm in control today. um, and then suddenly for an hour or two we've got the inner child driving and they're on a rampage, and the wounded part of us is controlling the inner narrative in our mind. But once that part has lessened back, it goes to sit back in the back of the bus, and the adult version of us comes forward, and we get to drive the bus again. And this is such a helpful analogy. It's really, really helped me through my journey, my many years of doing this work. So, yeah, this first stage of recognizing that you're the bus driver, you're the one in control. And sometimes these other younger parts come forward and take over. But our job on our healing journey is to recognize when there's a younger part driving the bus and say, hang on a minute. You get to sit in the back. You're still part of me, of course. You're still part of my story and part of my being, but you don't get to drive the bus. You're not the one making the decisions. So both of these ways of looking at us help us get this distance, which helps us have perspective and helps the adult part of us come forward and have more power. The second step that we can do to have more distance and to start to befriend our inner critic, once we've recognized, oh, wait, hang on, this isn't all of me, it's a part of me, we can then step two, and this can sometimes be really challenging if you're new to this work. But if you've been doing this work for a while, you might already have a sense of this, that actually all of your inner parts, all of these children sitting in the back of the bus, are actually trying in their own slightly disruptive, maybe not necessarily an adult way of doing things, but in their younger child way of doing things, they're actually trying to help you. They're actually trying to help you get to a better place. Now, that might be by guiding you in your career. It might be by trying to help you find love. It might be by trying to fill your life with lots of amazing, beautiful experiences. But sometimes, and this is true for the inner critic, sometimes these parts tell us that we're bad at something, or tell us that, oh, this is all your fault. You stupid idiot, you should have done differently. And it sounds very critical because it is, but when we actually talk with this part, and this is what I do in my sessions with my client, we actually take the space, create the distance, and then communicate with this part from a place of neutrality in our system. We actually get to understand and find out the part's intention underneath the criticism. And for the client I've just been working with, actually, this part's intention, what this part was telling her was that, oh, you're an idiot, you made the same mistake, it's all your fault, you deserve to feel this pain. But actually, when we got to the heart of this part, we discovered that actually this part was trying to stop her feeling alone. And of course, this is not an adult and not a desirable way of going about it, but this part was actually really young. And we also discovered, because this can be true often for our inner critics, is that the inner critic has mirrored an adult in your younger life. So for example, with this client, this inner critic had taken on the voice of her mum when she was really young. And at that point in her life, the mum was telling her, you made a mistake. If you keep doing this, you're going to end up alone. If you keep repeating this same mistake, you're going to end up alone. Now, the mum obviously had her own pain that was playing out, her own trauma that was in her system, and maybe didn't know how to communicate in the most loving way in that moment, because she probably had a child driving her bus and communicating in that moment. So it probably wasn't her highest self communicating in that moment. So she was saying, you silly thing, you made these mistakes. It is your fault. And if you keep doing this, you are going to end up alone. And my client had taken on, or the inner critic part of my client had taken on this narrative as a way of staying loyal to her mum, a way of loving her mum in a slightly dysfunctional way, but still a way of saying, like, my mum was trying to protect me, and I see that. And this is the only way that I know how to carry forward her message. So we were able to create distance and space and see this loving intention of trying not to end up alone. And then we can start to repair and heal this story in our system. So we were able with my client today to just create the space and just see, oh, okay, first of all, this is not all of me. And secondly, this part has actually a loving intention, even if the execution is maybe a bit dysfunctional. We can work on that in the sessions. But we at least see, oh, I see that your intention is one of good, is one of wanting me to not end up alone. So this is huge. This alone is really, really huge. And in my sessions with my clients, we do a lot of this work where we start to create this separation. And then we also start to work with these parts to say, hey, is there another way that you can stay loyal to my mum? Is there another way that you can help me to not be alone? Perhaps you can actually be with me and stay with me in my moments of loneliness and love me and channel the divine mother energy or the divine father energy and support me to not be alone in that way, rather than to tell me that I'm bad or to blame me or to tell me that it's all my fault. Can we find a different way of loving me and supporting me in those moments? And this would be step number 3, but this requires further steps that we would do obviously in the session, although maybe you can do that yourself if you've done a lot of this work, or maybe you can book in with me and we'll do this work together so that you don't have to feel alone. You don't have to do this whole journey by yourself, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot to do this healing work. And we, as the adult version of, so for me, adult Natalie, when I speak with my inner parts, because of course I do this work too, right? I've done this work for a really long time. When I'm talking with my inner parts, I get to say to them, this role that you're holding in my system, this role of trying to stop me being alone, it seems like a lot of responsibility. It seems like a big role. Can I help you with that? Can I, adult Natalie, who has all these adult resources available to me, can I help you take on that responsibility and maybe lessen your burden a bit, so that actually you, little me, little inner critic me, who actually really is just a younger child, an inner child version of me, maybe you want to go off and play. Maybe maybe you're exhausted and maybe you need to sleep, or maybe you want to go off and play in the fields or on your bike, or maybe you want to do some coloring, or maybe you want to go play with friends, or whatever the little version of me wants to go do. When I support that part to relieve its burden, then that little part gets to go off and play. And actually, it happens internally in my system that I start to experience more joy. The adult me, takes on the heavy stuff because I've got the shoulders to carry that. And the younger parts of me get to go and have fun and play. And where affirmations and positive statements come in, those are still really valid, because what you're doing is you're building up another part in your system that can see those positive parts of you and can really champion you in that way. And it also supports what we call more self energy, which is the adult part of you to say, actually, yeah, like this inner critic that's had so much power in my system before, because I thought it was me, I thought it was all of me. I can now see how small it is. It's just a young part of me. And the adult part of me, can start to see, like, actually, it's not true, all of that story that it's saying. And I can start to champion the positive parts of me, how pretty I think I am, how amazing I think I am, how intelligent, kind, loving, compassionate, goal-driven, how capable I am, how strong I am, all of those beautiful positive qualities. And that's where affirmations do really play a part. But it's a much slower route if we only go down that route and we don't actually do the shortcut of detaching from the inner parts and doing the inner work that I support my clients to do in my sessions. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Please share with me in the comments, like, did you have an aha moment in this session? Did you learn something about yourself? And if you did, like, how did it help you? I'd love to hear. And if you would love to work with me, just reach out to me. You can see my links in my YouTube header. Come book a session with me or send me a DM through one of my social media channels. And I'd love to chat with you and get to know you better.